The Imperial scout vessel Eternal Dawn drifted silently in Earth's orbit, its sleek black hull absorbing the sun's light rather than reflecting it. Admiral Tejo stood tall on the command bridge, his posture perfect as he stared at the blue-green planet below. His dark uniform wore the silver markings of Imperial High Command, each decoration earned through countless successful annexations of primitive worlds. "Beautiful, isn't it?" he remarked to no one in particular. "Always a shame when we have to introduce ourselves to these developing species. They never quite look the same afterward." Lieutenant Hannah approached from the sensor station, her steps quick and precise. She carried a data tablet displaying streams of information about Earth. Her face showed no emotion as she presented her findings. "Preliminary scans complete, Admiral. Their technology is primitive by our standards. They possess nuclear capabilities, but nothing that could threaten our vessels. They have basic space travel but haven't established permanent colonies beyond their atmosphere. Their satellite remains largely unexplored except for a few brief visits." Taijo took the tablet, scrolling through the data with a practiced finger. "Divided governance system." "Yes, Admiral. Multiple nation-states with varying levels of military capability. Their strongest powers appear to be called United States, China, and Russia, but they operate under a global discussion forum called the United Nations." The Admiral handed back the tablet with a slight smile. "Another simple annexation, then. The Emperor will be pleased with such a resource-rich world added to our territories." "Should we proceed with standard contact protocols?" Hannah asked. "Indeed. Inform Ambassador Kyung that his services will be required. We'll observe the usual formalities before we begin the integration process." 3 days later, the diplomatic vessel Golden Promise cut through Earth's atmosphere, its gravity drives adjusting to the planet's pull. Inside, Ambassador Kyung reviewed his briefing one final time. Earth would be his 47th annexation negotiation, and he expected it to proceed like all the others. Primitive species always followed the same pattern: initial shock, blustering resistance, then inevitable surrender. The ship landed in a large open space outside a sprawling complex of buildings in a city the humans called New York. Security teams disembarked first, establishing a perimeter around the vessel. Their armor glinted in the sunlight, weapons held at rest, but visibly powerful. Kyung emerged last, dressed in flowing robes of deep purple, the color of imperial authority. He was tall and thin, with an ageless face that revealed nothing of his thoughts. His eyes scanned the human delegation waiting on a red carpet. They looked remarkably composed, considering the circumstances. The Imperial Translation System had already processed Earth's major languages. A small device at Kyung's throat allowed him to speak, and the sound waves transformed into whatever language each listener best understood. "Representatives of Earth," he began, his voice carrying across the open space, "I come as an emissary of the Galactic Empire, the oldest and most advanced civilization in this region of space. Our territory spans 3,000 star systems and includes over 400 intelligent species." He paused, noting the cameras and recording devices the humans had positioned around the area. "Good, let them broadcast this to their people. The Empire has observed your world for some time. We recognize your potential and your challenges. Today, I offer you the opportunity to join our collective as a protectorate state. This arrangement would grant you access to Imperial technology, medicine, and resources. Your people would be permitted to travel to other worlds within designated sectors. In exchange, you would acknowledge Imperial authority and contribute a reasonable portion of your world's resources to our shared endeavors." Kyung clasped his hands before him. "The alternative is less pleasant. Worlds that resist Imperial integration face immediate military action, resulting in significant casualties and infrastructure damage before inevitable submission. You have 48 hours to provide your answer." He expected protests, demands for more time, perhaps even threats. Instead, the humans asked for a brief recess to discuss among themselves. They had retreated into their United Nations building while Kyung waited by his ship. "They're taking it rather well," noted his security chief. "Indeed," Kyung replied. "Most species at this stage of development respond with more emotion." After only 3 hours, far less time than the full 48 they had been granted, the human delegation returned. Their spokesperson was a woman with dark skin and short gray hair. She wore a simple blue suit and carried herself with unexpected dignity. "Ambassador Kyung," she began, "after consultation with all member nations, we have formulated our response." Kyung raised an eyebrow. "That was quick. I hope it indicates wisdom." The woman's expression remained neutral. "We have no desire for conflict," she stated, "but we strongly advise against hostile action. This is our only warning." A moment of silence followed before Kyung laughed, the sound sharp in the afternoon air. Several members of his security team joined with their own chuckles. "Warning noted," he replied, making no effort to hide his amusement. "I will convey your response to Imperial Command." He turned and walked back to his ship, not bothering to look back at the humans. They would learn soon enough. Once aboard the Golden Promise and safely in orbit, Kyung recorded his report for Imperial High Command. His recommendation was clear and confident. "These humans display unusual confidence despite their obvious technological inferiority. While they did not openly refuse our offer, their response amounts to defiance. I believe a minor disciplinary action would be appropriate, perhaps the destruction of a few military installations or the neutralization of one of their smaller cities. Nothing too severe, but enough to demonstrate the consequences of disrespect toward the Empire. Once they understand their position, I expect they will quickly come to terms." The recording was transmitted through faster-than-light communications to the Imperial capital world. There, in his grand palace of white stone and crystalline spires, Emperor Minho reviewed the report personally. He had ruled the Empire for over 3 centuries, overseeing the expansion of imperial borders through both diplomacy and conquest. "Another primitive world thinking itself special," he mused to his advisors. "We've seen this countless times before." With a single thumbprint pressed against the glowing screen, he approved Kyung's recommendation. The order would be transmitted immediately to the Imperial battle group already positioned in a nearby star system. "Let it be done," he announced to his war council. "Show them the meaning of Imperial might. By next month, Earth will be just another compliant world in our registry." None of them could have known that with this decision, they had sealed the Empire's fate. Commander Jun paced the bridge of the inevitable victory, his footsteps echoing against the polished black floor. The massive warship led a battle group of 5 vessels, their hulls gleaming like predatory fish as they approached the blue planet. Earth grew larger on the main viewing screen, clouds swirling across its surface. "Status report," Jun called out, adjusting his uniform collar. The red and silver insignia of the Imperial fleet caught the light as he moved. Officer Sook's fingers danced across her control panel. Her face reflected the glow of screens displaying weapon systems information. "All ships report ready, Commander. Weapons charged at 80% capacity." Jun nodded, pleased. 80% is excessive for a primitive world, but High Command wants to make an impression. He turned to address the bridge crew. "Remember, this is a disciplinary action. We are not here to destroy their civilization, only to demonstrate the futility of resistance." The bridge crew worked with quiet efficiency. Most had participated in similar operations before. The subjugation of developing worlds followed a familiar pattern. First came the diplomatic approach, then the warning shot, and finally full integration into the Empire. Earth was simply the latest in a long line. "We've received targeting coordinates from intelligence," announced Officer Sook. "Primary military installations in regions designated North America, Asia, and Europe. The targets include something called the Pentagon, several naval bases, and missile silos." Jun studied the tactical display. Interesting that they concentrate their military power in such obvious locations. Their defensive strategy is primitive indeed. The 5 Imperial ships moved into attack formation, 4 vessels forming a diamond pattern around the flagship, standard procedure for ensuring maximum firing coverage while maintaining defensive integrity. All ships report weapons locked on targets. Suk confirmed. Awaiting your command. Jun straightened his back and clasped his hands behind him. Proceed with the first volley. Let's give them something to remember us by. The order transmitted instantly to all ships in the battle group. The vessels hummed with energy as their weapon systems activated. From the underside of each ship, brilliant blue-white beams lanced toward Earth's surface. The energy discharge was precisely calculated, powerful enough to devastate the targeted military installations, but controlled enough to avoid widespread civilian casualties. The bridge crew watched the tactical display, expecting to see confirmation of successful strikes. Instead, the impossible happened. The energy beams reached Earth's atmosphere and simply vanished. No explosions, no destruction. The weapons fire dissipated against invisible barriers protecting the targeted areas. What happened? Jun demanded, leaning forward over the tactical display. Report. Officer Suk's fingers flew across her console. Sir, the energy signatures. They're being absorbed by some kind of defensive shield technology. Nothing in our scans indicated they possessed such capabilities. Before Jun could process this information, Officer Dai at the sensor station cried out in alarm. His usually composed face now showed naked fear. Commander, we have multiple signatures emerging from the planet's oceans. More are appearing in orbit. They were there all along. Dai's voice cracked with disbelief. They're using some kind of advanced camouflage technology. Our sensors didn't detect them until they deactivated their cloaking systems. The tactical display updated, showing dozens of vessels rising from Earth's oceans. More ships seemed to materialize from empty space, as if shedding invisible skins. They varied in size, some small and agile, others massive dreadnoughts that dwarfed even the inevitable Victory. The Earth vessels bore no resemblance to Imperial designs. Where Imperial ships were angular and intimidating, these were smooth, almost organic in appearance. They moved with impossible grace, accelerating and changing direction without the thrust delays that even the best Imperial ships experienced. Impossible, whispered Jun. They're at least 3 centuries behind us. This can't be happening. Sir, they're surrounding us, Officer Suk reported. Formation integrity compromised. Jun snapped back to command mode. All ships, evasive maneuvers. Raise shields to maximum and prepare secondary weapon systems. The Imperial ships attempted to break formation and regroup, but the Earth vessels anticipated every move. They flowed like water around the Imperial battle group, closing all escape routes except for a narrow corridor that seemed deliberately left open. Sir, they're not firing conventional weapons, reported Officer Dai, his eyes wide. They're deploying some kind of... I don't know what these are. The Earth vessels released swarms of small, dart-like objects. They moved too fast for the Imperial tracking systems to target. The first wave struck the smallest Imperial ship, the Unyielding Discipline. Instead of explosions, the darts attached themselves to the hull and pulsed with blue light. The Unyielding Discipline reports complete power failure. Suk called out. All systems offline. Weapons, engines, even life support is switching to emergency backup. A second wave struck another Imperial vessel, with identical results. Within minutes, 2 more ships fell silent, drifting helplessly in space. They're using targeted electromagnetic pulse technology, Jun realized, disabling our ships without destroying them. He had never seen such precision. The Imperial fleet possessed EMP weapons, but nothing that could disable a warship while leaving life support systems functional. Sir, they're hailing us, Officer Suk reported. Jun hesitated, then nodded. Put it through. The main screen shifted to show a human face, a woman with calm eyes and short gray hair. Jun recognized her as the same representative who had delivered Earth's warning. "This is Earth Defense Command," she stated simply. "Your vessels have been neutralized using non-lethal methods. Your crews will remain unarmed. We have no desire for bloodshed, but we will not permit hostile actions against our planet. This demonstration represents a fraction of our defensive capabilities." "Who are you people?" Joan demanded. "How did you conceal this level of technology?" The woman's expression didn't change. "We warned you once. That was more courtesy than your empire has shown to other worlds. Your ships are now being contained. You have one vessel remaining with ability to return to your territory. I suggest you use it to deliver an accurate report of what happened here." The communication cut off. June stared at the blank screen in shock. "Sir, the scout ship Swift Return is still operational," reported Officer Dye. "They're requesting permission to break away." June nodded numbly. "Granted. They need to warn the Empire." He looked around the bridge of the mighty Inevitable Victory, now powerless and adrift. "Meanwhile, we appear to be guests of Earth for the foreseeable future." As the Swift Return accelerated away, its engines straining under emergency power, Jun watched the Earth vessels take up positions around his disabled fleet. They moved with deliberate precision, neither threatening nor aggressive, but unmistakably in control. "They could have destroyed us," Officer Sook said quietly. "Why didn't they?" Jun had no answer. For the first time in his long military career, he faced an enemy that didn't behave according to any known pattern. The Empire had encountered thousands of species across the galaxy, but none like these humans. "Record everything," he ordered his crew. "The Empire needs to know exactly what we're dealing with." The Swift Return disappeared in a flash of light as it jumped to faster-than-light travel, carrying news that would soon shake the foundations of the greatest empire the galaxy had ever known. The Imperial Palace on the capital world Nexus Prime glowed with artificial starlight as night fell across the city. Inside the Grand Council chamber, 13 figures sat around a circular table made of polished black stone. The chamber's high ceiling disappeared into shadows above them, and the walls displayed moving images of imperial conquests throughout history. Emperor Minho occupied the largest seat, his gold and white robes standing out against the dark room. His face, though youthful due to life extension treatments, now showed lines of worry as he waited for the emergency meeting to begin. "The scout ship Swift Return has docked," announced a palace attendant from the doorway. "Intelligence Director Minji will present their findings." The council members shifted in their seats. News had already spread through the upper levels of government. An Imperial battle group defeated at Earth. Some claimed it was a minor setback. Others whispered of disaster. Director Minji entered the chamber with quick, efficient steps. Her gray uniform bore no decorations despite her high rank. She carried a single data tablet and stood at the presentation area without bowing, a breach of protocol that spoke to the urgency of the situation. "Imperial Council," she began. "I will be direct. The battle group sent to discipline Earth has been neutralized. 4 warships disabled, their crews contained but unharmed. Only the scout ship escaped to bring us this information." Murmurs spread around the table. Admiral Yuma, head of the Imperial fleet, spoke first. "Impossible. Commander Jun is one of our finest officers. Those ships carried enough firepower to subdue planets twice Earth's size." Minji activated her tablet, and a holographic display appeared above the council table. It showed the Imperial vessels surrounded by unfamiliar craft. "This footage comes directly from the Swift Return sensors," she explained. "The Earth vessels emerged from hiding places in the ocean, and from what appeared to be empty space. They used non-lethal weapons to disable our ships in less than 3 hours." "A lucky ambush," suggested Minister Dury, head of Colonial Affairs. "We simply underestimated their current technology level." Director Minji shook her head. "Our understanding of Earth was catastrophically wrong." Her voice remained steady despite the gravity of her words. "Our subsequent analysis indicates humans have been aware of galactic civilization for centuries. They've been watching us, studying us, learning from our conflicts and mistakes. The council chamber grew quiet. Emperor Minho leaned forward on his throne, his jeweled rings catching the light. How is this possible? Our surveys were detected and fed false information. Minji interrupted, something that would normally merit severe punishment, but the situation had moved beyond court protocols. The emperor's mouth tightened, but he allowed her to continue. Humans developed along a different technological path than our own. While we mastered faster-than-light travel and energy weapons, they focused on stealth technology and information systems. They allowed us to see only what they wanted us to see. Admiral Yuna slammed her hand on the table. No developing world could hide such advancement from our scan technologies. Our survey ships use the most sophisticated sensors in the galaxy, which apparently can be fooled, Minji replied. She touched her tablet again, and the hologram shifted to show detailed scans of the Earth vessels. Notice the hull configuration. These ships don't use standard propulsion systems. Our analysis suggests they manipulate gravitational fields directly, allowing for movement without visible engines or energy signatures. The council members studied the images, their faces growing increasingly concerned. How long have they been watching us? Asked Minister Dury. Based on intercepted communications from their vessels, we believe they've been observing galactic civilizations for at least 700 years. They established hidden observation posts throughout our territory, gathering information while remaining undetected. Emperor Minho's face had grown pale. 700 years. That's impossible. No species could maintain such secrecy for so long. From the far end of the table, a thin, aged voice spoke up. Not impossible, merely improbable. All eyes turned to Counselor Taman, the eldest member of the Imperial Advisory Board. At 340 years old, he had served under 3 emperors. His wrinkled hands trembled slightly as he slowly rose from his seat. The silent watchers, he whispered, his voice carrying in the quiet chamber. What are you talking about, Taman? The emperor asked. There is an ancient legend, mentioned in texts from the First Empire. It speaks of a race that would observe all others, judging whether they were worthy of cosmic citizenship. Taman's voice trembled. The old texts describe them as guardians who watch from shadows, learning all secrets while revealing none of their own. The council members exchanged uneasy glances. Mythical nonsense, Admiral Yuna scoffed, but her voice lacked conviction. Taman continued as if she hadn't spoken. The legend says they would reveal themselves only when necessary, either to welcome a worthy species into galactic community or to stop those who threaten stability. He lowered himself back into his seat. I fear we have failed their test. Director Minji nodded grimly. Myth or not, our intelligence now indicates that Earth possesses a comprehensive database of Imperial weaknesses. They know every vulnerability in our fleet, every gap in our defenses. The footage from the swift return shows they could have destroyed our ships, but chose not to. What do they want? Emperor Minho asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Unknown, Minji replied. They've made no demands. They simply neutralized our threat and sent back one ship with the recording of what happened. The council chamber fell silent as the implications became clear. They hadn't discovered a primitive world ripe for conquest. They had provoked perhaps the most advanced civilization in the galaxy. Minister Dury cleared his throat. Perhaps we should send a larger force. Show them the full might of the Empire. Admiral Yuna shook her head. If what Director Minji says is true, a larger force would simply mean more ships lost. We have 10,000 worlds, said the Emperor. Surely our numbers. Numbers mean nothing against superior technology, interrupted Admiral Yuna. If they can disable our most advanced warships without destroying them, imagine what weapons they hold in reserve. The holographic display shifted again, showing a message transmitted from Earth after the battle. The same woman who had issued their warning appeared. To the Galactic Empire, we have contained your vessels without bloodshed, demonstrating a fraction of our defensive capabilities. We have no desire for war, but we will defend ourselves if threatened again. Your crew members will be treated with dignity and return to you once we are satisfied there will be no further aggression. Consider carefully your next actions." Emperor Minho stared at the message for a long moment. Are they bluffing? Could they truly have technology so far beyond ours? Unknown, admitted Director Minji. But considering they hid their true nature from us for centuries, I believe we must take their claims seriously. Counselor Taman's aged voice rose again. The Silent Watchers, if the legends are true, possess wisdom beyond mere technology. They watched other empires rise and fall long before ours existed. The council members looked to their emperor, waiting for his decision. Minho sat frozen on his throne, the weight of 3,000 worlds suddenly heavy on his shoulders. "We must learn more," he finally said. "Before we make any decision, we need to understand exactly what, or who, we are facing." No one in that chamber could have predicted that within 6 months, the empire they had served their entire lives would cease to exist. Admiral Jihoon stood before the massive tactical display that filled the wall of Imperial Command Center 6. His normally perfect uniform looked wrinkled, and dark circles had formed under his eyes from lack of sleep. He hadn't left the command center in 3 days. The display showed the entire Imperial territory, 3,000 star systems spread across a spiral arm of the galaxy. Red lights blinked across the map, each one representing a military installation that had gone silent. "There goes another one," said Lieutenant Suno, pointing to a flashing indicator near the outer rim. Orbital defense platform in the Kelduri system just went dark. Jihoon stared at the display, his hands clenched into fists behind his back. Another red light blinked out, signifying the loss of yet another military outpost. "How are they doing this?" he demanded of his staff. "How can they strike with such precision across such vast distances?" No one answered. The dozen officers on duty looked as tired as Jihoon felt. For 3 weeks, Earth forces had been systematically neutralizing Imperial military assets throughout the galaxy. The pattern was always the same. Small, undetectable ships would appear near an Imperial installation, disable its systems, and vanish before reinforcements could arrive. Not a single civilian target had been struck. Only weapons platforms, shipyards, and command centers, each disabled with surgical precision, often with minimal casualties. The humans even left life support systems functioning while disabling weapons and propulsion. Admiral called Communications Officer Yuna from her station. "We're receiving reports of uprisings on 17 outer worlds. They claim to be under Earth's protection now." Jihoon crossed the room in quick strides to look at her screen. The reports showed civilian populations on recently colonized planets declaring independence from the Empire. Imperial governors were being peacefully removed from office, often escorted to ships, and sent back to Imperial space. "They're dismantling us piece by piece," Jihoon whispered, and without firing a shot. "Sir," Yuna continued, "we've intercepted communications between Earth vessels and these worlds. They're offering technology sharing and defensive pacts with any planet that rejects Imperial control." Jihoon's communication device chimed. The Emperor's seal appeared on the small screen. He stepped away from his staff and accepted the call. Emperor Minho's face appeared, his features tight with anger. "Admiral Jihoon, this humiliation cannot continue. Every day we appear weaker to our subject worlds. I understand, Your Majesty, but these humans. I don't want excuses." The Emperor snapped. "I want results. The Council has approved my decision. We will end this with one decisive blow. Gather the fleet for a direct assault on Earth. Every available ship." Jihoon felt his stomach tighten. "Your Majesty, with respect, that may be exactly what they want us to do. Our intelligence suggests. Are you questioning an Imperial order, Admiral?" Jihoon stiffened. "No, Your Majesty." "Good. Begin preparations immediately. We will show these humans the true meaning of Imperial power." The communication ended. Jihoon stood motionless for a moment, then returned to the command center. New orders, he announced. We are to gather the Imperial Armada for a direct assault on Earth. All available ships. His staff looked at him in shock. Officer Yunha spoke up. But sir, our analysis suggests they're operating at minimal capacity. Their technology is clearly superior to ours. If they can strike anywhere in our territory without warning. I don't care. Ji-hoon shouted, slamming his fist on the console. Those are the Emperor's orders. Transmit the command. The entire Armada will converge on Earth's solar system in 3 days. We will not be humiliated by a single planet. For the next 72 hours, Imperial ships from across the galaxy answered the call. Massive battleships, swift cruisers, fighter carriers, vessels of every size and function formed up at designated rally points. Many had to abandon their defensive positions, leaving Imperial worlds vulnerable. Ji-hoon watched from the bridge of the Imperial flagship Eternal Glory as the largest military force ever assembled in Imperial history prepared for jump. Over 2,000 warships carrying millions of soldiers and enough firepower to reduce Earth to molten rock. All ships report ready, Admiral, said Captain Heejin, his executive officer. Ji-hoon nodded. Then we proceed as planned. All ships will jump simultaneously. We will emerge in Earth's solar system in attack formation. The jump coordinates had been carefully calculated. The fleet would appear just beyond the orbit of Earth's moon, close enough for an immediate attack, but far enough to avoid any planetary defense systems. Commence jump on my mark, Ji-hoon ordered. He took a deep breath. 3, 2, 1, mark. 2,000 ships activated their faster-than-light drives at the same moment. Space twisted around them as they tore through the fabric of reality to emerge light years away. The Imperial Armada appeared in Earth's solar system in perfect formation, weapons charged and ready to fire. What they found waiting for them was not a planet desperately mounting a final defense. It was a carefully constructed killing field. Admiral, Captain Heejin cried out. Unknown objects surrounding our fleet. They were invisible to our sensors until we arrived. The tactical display showed thousands of small platforms suddenly appearing throughout the formation. They had been waiting, hidden by technology the Empire couldn't detect. Evasive maneuvers. Ji-hoon ordered. All ships, fire at will. Before his orders could be carried out, the platforms activated. Not with explosive force or energy weapons, but with waves of electromagnetic energy precisely calibrated to Imperial systems. Throughout the fleet, ships began losing power. Weapon systems failed first, then engines, then communications. Life support and gravity remained functional. The humans were being selective in what they disabled. Sir, we're being hailed, reported the communications officer, her voice trembling. It's coming from Earth. Put it through, Ji-hoon said, his shoulders slumping in defeat. A human face appeared on the main screen, an older man with dark skin and white hair. Admiral Ji-hoon, the man said calmly. This is Earth Defense Command. Your fleet has been neutralized. Please note that we have taken care to ensure the safety of your crews. No life support systems have been compromised. What do you want? Ji-hoon asked. We want peace, Admiral. Something your empire seems unable to understand. Your ships will be allowed to return to Imperial space once we complete our work. What work? The human smiled slightly. The restructuring of the galaxy. Your emperor will soon receive our terms. The communication ended. Ji-hoon walked to the viewing port and looked out at his mighty fleet, now nothing more than metal shells floating helplessly in space. Earth ships moved among them, small compared to the Imperial vessels, but clearly in complete control. In his secure bunker deep beneath the Imperial Palace, Emperor Minho watched the reports come in with growing horror. The entire Armada, neutralized in less than an hour. No significant casualties, but every ship rendered completely powerless. The latest report included a message from the humans. We could have destroyed your fleet. Remember this when our representatives arrive to discuss the future of the galaxy. Later that evening, A celebration filled the gardens surrounding the hall. Representatives from hundreds of worlds mingled freely, many meeting as equals for the first time. Music from a dozen planets blended into a strange but harmonious backdrop to the historic moment. Ambassador Kyung, who had delivered the Empire's ultimatum to Earth and now witnessed its transformation, found himself standing alone near a fountain. He had spent weeks under Earth's custody after the failed attack, expecting torture or execution. Instead, the humans had treated him with respect, even allowing him to help draft sections of the treaty. He noticed Geo approaching and straightened his posture, old habits of imperial dignity still ingrained in him. Ambassador Kyung, Geo greeted him. "You seem deep in thought." "I was reflecting on how quickly everything changed," Kyung replied. "6 months ago, I delivered an ultimatum to your world. Now I've helped dismantle the empire I served my entire life." They stood in silence for a moment, watching the diverse crowd. "I've been meaning to ask you something," Kyung said quietly. "That warning you gave us. Just one warning. Why? Most species beg for more time, make multiple appeals when faced with imperial power." Geo smiled slightly. "In our history, we found that those who ignore a single clear warning reveal much about their character. Those who require multiple warnings rarely change their ways. They simply become better at hiding their intentions." Kyung nodded slowly, understanding dawning on his face. "A test. Of sorts. We needed to know if your empire could listen." Geo continued. "The response told us everything we needed to know about your leadership and values." "And now?" Kyung asked. "Now we begin the harder work, learning to talk to each other as equals." Geo gestured to the gathering. "This is just the beginning. Creating a constitution is simple compared to the challenge of truly understanding one another." Across the galaxy, former imperial worlds were making their choices, joining the new confederation, declaring independence, or forming regional alliances. For the first time in 10,000 years, the peoples of the galaxy were charting their own courses. On Earth, citizens watched the events unfold through public broadcasts. Many had been shocked when their governments revealed the truth, that humanity had not been alone, that Earth had maintained advanced hidden technology for centuries, watching and waiting. In a small office overlooking the Pacific Ocean, the woman who had delivered Earth's single warning to the Empire looked out at the water. General Maya had served in Earth's secret space defense force for 40 years, preparing for a moment she had hoped would never come. A young aide entered with a data tablet. "The treaty is signed, General. The transition has officially begun." Maya nodded. "And the defense platforms?" "Being reconfigured as communication and research stations as ordered. Weapon systems are being deactivated, but can be restored if needed." "Let's hope they never are," Maya said quietly. She thought about the warning she had delivered months ago. One simple message that had ultimately changed the course of galactic history. Sometimes the smallest moments carried the greatest weight. And Earth, the world that had brought down an empire with a single warning, watched with hope as a new era began, not of domination, but of conversation, not of subjects, but of partners, not of empire, but of community. The end. Minho dismissed his advisors and sat alone on his throne. He finally understood the depth of his mistake. They had awakened something ancient and powerful, something that had been watching from the shadows for centuries. And now, the empire that had stood for 10,000 years would answer for its actions. 6 months after the defeat of the Imperial Armada, the Grand Hall of Unity on Nexus Prime glowed with soft golden light. The massive chamber had once served as the throne room of the Galactic Empire, its walls decorated with scenes of conquest and domination. Now those same walls were covered with new images, star maps showing thousands of worlds connected not by chains of control, but by networks of cooperation. Emperor Minho entered the hall wearing simple white robes instead of his usual ornate imperial garments. The crown was absent from his head, and he walked without the usual procession of guards and attendants. His face showed the strain of the past months, the rapid collapse of imperial authority, the negotiations that followed, and finally the acceptance that 10,000 years of empire had come to an end. The hall contained representatives from over 500 worlds, seated in a circular arrangement that gave no position more prominence than another. At the center stood a round table of polished wood, not the black stone of imperial councils, but something warm and natural, harvested from a forest on Earth. Waiting at the table was Jiho, the Earth representative. Unlike the elaborate dress of those around him, he wore a simple gray suit. His hair was silver at the temples, and his face showed neither triumph nor condescension, merely patience. Before him lay a document, the final page of a treaty that had taken months to craft. Minho approached the table. The hall fell silent. "The document is prepared, Emperor Minho," Jiho said quietly. "Or should I say, Citizen Minho, as will be your title after today." Minho looked out at the assembled representatives. Many had once been his subjects. Some had been enemies. Now they watched as history unfolded before them. "I am ready," he replied. A pen was placed in his hand, not an electronic signature device, but an actual writing instrument containing ink. The humans had insisted on this touch, saying that important moments should involve physical connection to the act. Minho's hand trembled slightly as he bent to sign the final page. With a few strokes, he ended an empire and began something new. "With this treaty," Jiho explained as Minho completed his signature, "the empire becomes the foundation, a constitutional confederation of worlds with equal representation. Each planet will send delegates to the Galactic Assembly, where decisions will be made by consensus rather than decree." Former Councilor Taman, now heading the Transition Committee, leaned forward in his seat. The oldest living Imperial advisor had surprised many by embracing the changes, working tirelessly to ensure a peaceful transition. "And Earth's role in this new order?" Taman asked. "After demonstrating such power, surely you will claim special authority for yourselves." Jiho shook his head. "Advisors only. Earth will have the same single vote as any other world in the Confederation." Murmurs spread through the assembly. This was not what many had expected. The humans had proven their technological superiority, yet they sought no special powers, no territory, no tributes. "I don't understand," said Taman, voicing what many were thinking. "You could rule us all. Why choose this path?" "Because our history is filled with wars, oppression, and mistakes," Jiho replied. "We learned long ago that power corrupts and that true strength comes from cooperation, not domination. We hid ourselves away not out of fear, but to avoid spreading our worst tendencies to the stars." He stood and addressed the entire assembly. "Humanity spent centuries watching galactic civilization develop. We saw empires rise and fall. We witnessed countless species make the same mistakes we once made, seeking dominance rather than partnership, conquest rather than cooperation. So you judged us," Minho said, a touch of bitterness in his voice. "No," Jiho corrected gently. "We observed, and when your empire discovered us, we gave you a choice through our warning. You chose the path of force, and we responded accordingly." The treaty was passed around the circle, each representative adding their signature. With each name, the old order faded further, and the new one took shape.